I was on my knees in the rain, my hands shaking so much I could barely keep them pressed to my face. The sound of my own sobbing drowned out the world. I didn't even notice the people watching from their windows, or the curious eyes peeking from behind half-closed doors. All I could hear was the pounding of my heart and the voice in my head screaming, "It's gone. It's all gone." My dress was soaked through, the mud clung to my skin, and the cold crept deep into my bones. But the pain in my chest burned hotter than any fire. It was the day the years finally won. I had fought for so long. Fought battles I never signed up for, battles that wore me down piece by piece until I barely recognized myself. But on that day, in that street, the last piece of me slipped away. The smile I had once carried so easily, the light that used to spill from my face whenever I laughed, it was gone. Stolen. And no matter how hard I tried, I knew I could never get it back. A man's shadow fell across me, long and sharp in the dim light. His boots stopped just inches from where I knelt. My breath caught. I didn't dare look up because I knew, oh I knew. His arrival meant the end of something I'd been holding on to for dear life. His voice came deep and cold. "It's over." The words hit harder than any slap. My hand slipped from my face. My mouth opened to speak, but no sound came out. The man took one step closer. And then, it didn't begin in the rain. It began years before, in a small warm kitchen that always smelled of cinnamon bread. I was 23 with more hope than sense, and I thought the world was something you could tame if you just smiled hard enough. My grandmother used to say, "Darling, life is a river. Don't think you can change where it flows, learn to swim with it." I didn't believe her back then. I thought if you fought hard enough you could change anything. Back then my smile was real. I had a little shop on the corner of Willow Street. Nothing fancy, just a tiny place where I sold handmade scarves, knitted hats, and small trinkets I'd collected. People liked coming in not just to buy things, but to talk. The shop had a blue door with a bell that jingled every time someone came in, and I painted the walls sunshine yellow because I wanted everyone to feel welcome. Life was small, yes, but it was mine. And then he came. His name was Daniel. He walked in one breezy afternoon while I was rearranging the scarves. He had that easy kind of smile, the kind that makes you think the world might be kinder than it is. He bought nothing the first time, just looked around, asked about the knitted patterns, and left. But he came back the next day, and the next, and before I knew it, his shadow was as familiar in my shop as the afternoon light spilling across the floor. We started talking, and I found myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone. He listened. Really listened. Weeks passed, and I began to believe maybe my grandmother had been wrong. Maybe you could change the river's path. Maybe you could make life something you wanted. Our friendship turned to love, and love turned to plans. We talked about expanding my shop, about traveling, about filling our lives with things we'd never seen. I thought I was happy. No, I was happy. But happiness is a fragile thing. Sometimes it doesn't shatter with a bang. Sometimes it cracks quietly, like a cup left in the sink too long, until one day it just falls apart in your hands. The first crack came when Daniel started coming less often. He said work was keeping him late. Then came the unanswered letters. Then the short, distant conversations. I told myself it was just a phase. I smiled anyway. I kept the shop running. But something heavy began settling in my chest. Then one day, Daniel came to the shop, his face pale and his hands restless. "We need to talk," he said. Those 3 words have a way of freezing the air in the room. I remember gripping the edge of the counter so tightly that my knuckles ached. He told me about debts, about choices he'd made without telling me, about people I should stay away from. His eyes kept darting to the window as if someone might be watching. And then he said something that chilled me to the bone. "They're not going to leave me alone, Anna. And they're not going to leave you alone either." The words echoed in my head for days. That was the moment the river began to pull me under. I tried to keep going. I tried to act like everything was normal. But strange men began showing up near my shop, leaning on lampposts, watching. The bell above my door would ring, but instead of familiar customers, there would be strangers who spoke in low voices and left without buying a thing. At night, I would hear footsteps outside my apartment. One evening I came home to find my front door slightly open. Inside, nothing was stolen, but everything had been moved. My books were rearranged. My drawers were half open. A scarf I'd left on the couch was neatly folded on the table. It was like someone wanted me to know they'd been there. I ran to Daniel's place, but he wasn't there. The next morning, I got a letter slid under my door. No name, no signature, just 4 words. You owe us now. That was the beginning of the battle I never chose. From that day, fear became my shadow. I still opened the shop, still smiled for the customers, but inside I was unraveling. I stopped telling my friends what was happening because I didn't want to drag them into it. Every time the bell above my door rang, my heart raced. Every time I walked home, I looked over my shoulder. Weeks later, Daniel returned. Only this time he wasn't alone. 2 men came with him, tall and silent, their eyes as cold as winter stone. Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes as he said, "Anna, you have to help me. Just for a while. Keep something safe for me." He pulled out a small wooden box, no bigger than a loaf of bread. It was heavy, too heavy for its size. My hands shook as I took it. "What's in it?" I asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. "You don't want to know." I should have thrown it back at him. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I told myself it was just until he sorted things out. Just until it was safe. I didn't know then that the moment I took that box, I had stepped onto a road I couldn't leave. And 3 days later, the shop door exploded inward. The shop door didn't just open. It flew inward with a crack so loud it sounded like the sky splitting. The bell above the frame clanged violently before it snapped off and hit the floor. My heart leapt into my throat. 3 men stepped inside. Not Daniel. Not anyone I'd ever seen before. The first was tall, with a jagged scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his jaw. The second was shorter but built like a wall, his thick hands curling into fists the size of small hammers. The third didn't move much. He stood just inside the doorway, his face half hidden under the brim of a hat. But his eyes were fixed on me like a hawk ready to strike. I backed up until my legs hit the counter. My breath came in short, sharp bursts. "Where is it?" the tall man asked. His voice was like gravel sliding across stone. I don't know what you mean," I stammered. The shorter man took 1 step forward and swept his arm across a display table. Scarves, hats, and trinkets scattered to the floor. The crash made me flinch. "Don't play games," he said. "Daniel had something. He gave it to you." I thought of the wooden box hidden in the cupboard behind me. My hand twitched toward it before I could stop myself, and the tall man's eyes followed the movement. He smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf gives before it pounces. "Get it," he said. Every part of me screamed to run, but my legs were rooted to the floor. Slowly, I reached into the cupboard and pulled the box out. It felt heavier now, like it knew it was about to be taken. I held it close to my chest. "What's inside?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The tall man stepped closer. "You really don't want to know." I hesitated, and in that tiny moment of hesitation, the shorter man lunged. His hand grabbed the box, yanking it from my arms. But as soon as his fingers touched it, something changed. His expression shifted from cold determination to something close to fear. He looked at the tall man. "It's warm," he muttered. The tall man's jaw tightened. "Then we're out of time." Before I could ask what that meant, they were gone, vanished into the rainy street, the broken door swinging in the wind. I stood frozen for a long time. My shop was a mess. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might tear free from my chest. Finally, my knees gave out and I sank to the floor. That was when I noticed it. A small scrap of paper lying where the tall man had stood. It was damp from the rain, but I could still read the words. "If they open it, you're next." The room spun. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted the salt on my lips. I locked the shop and went straight to Daniel's apartment. No answer. I banged on the door until my hands ached, but no one came. His neighbors said they hadn't seen him in days. For the next week, I barely slept. I kept expecting them to come back. Every creak in the floorboards, every shadow outside my window made my skin prickle. I thought about going to the police, but what could I say? That my boyfriend gave me a box, some strangers took it, and now I was scared? They would ask what was inside. I didn't know. Days turned to weeks. Nothing happened. Slowly, my fear dulled into a constant, uneasy ache. I started putting my shop back together. The broken door was replaced. I forced myself to smile for customers again. Sometimes I even believed things might go back to normal. Then one rainy evening, the shop bell rang. I looked up from the counter and froze. Daniel was standing there. He was drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes bloodshot. He closed the door behind him and locked it. "They took it, didn't they?" he asked. I didn't answer. Daniel stepped closer, his voice urgent. "Anna, you have to leave. Tonight. You can't be here when they come back." "Why, Daniel? What was in that box?" He hesitated, glancing toward the windows like the men might be out there watching. "It doesn't matter. All that matters is they think you know more than you do." I shook my head. "No. You tell me now. You tell me or." The sound cut through my words like a knife. The soft, slow creak of the shop's door swinging open behind him. Daniel's face went pale. We both turned. Standing there was the man with the brimmed hat. Only this time, he wasn't alone. The man with the brimmed hat stepped fully into the shop, closing the door with slow, deliberate care. His presence seemed to suck the air out of the room. Behind him came another man, a tall, wiry figure with deep lines etched into his face, as though life had carved its story into his skin with a dull knife. His hands were gloved, even though the weather was warm. Neither of them spoke at first. They simply looked at Daniel. Then at me. "You've been busy," the brimmed hat man finally said. His voice was calm, almost polite, but the way his eyes moved from my face to my shaking hands made my stomach twist. Daniel stepped in front of me. "Leave her out of this. She doesn't know anything." The brimmed hat man took a slow step forward. "That's not what we've been told." The wiry man shut the blinds with one hand, the wooden slats clattering against each other. Shadows swallowed the shop. I could still hear the faint patter of rain outside, but inside it was too quiet. "What was in that box?" the brimmed hat man asked me directly. I shook my head. "I told you I don't." He raised a hand, and the wiry man moved toward the counter. In one swift motion, he swept his arm across it, sending my ledger, my scissors, and the small vase of fresh daisies crashing to the floor. The sound made me jump. Daniel grabbed my wrist. "Anna, listen to me," he said, his voice low but urgent. "They're not going to stop until they get what they want. You have to." But he didn't finish. The brimmed hat man reached into his coat and pulled out a small black object. At first I thought it was a gun, but it was smaller, stranger, shaped almost like a fountain pen, but with a dull metal tip. He held it loosely in his hand, as though it was nothing special. "This isn't a negotiation," he said. "We want the truth and we want it now." I didn't even have time to respond before Daniel moved. He lunged toward the brimmed hat man, trying to knock the object away. For a second I thought he might succeed. But the wiry man caught him by the collar and yanked him back with terrifying strength. The brimmed hat man's expression didn't change. He stepped closer to me, close enough that I could smell tobacco on his coat. "You touched the box," he said softly. "That means you're part of this now." "I didn't open it," I blurted. "I didn't even look inside." His lips curled into the faintest smile. "Pity. You might have understood why you're about to lose everything." The wiry man shoved Daniel toward the door. "You're coming with us." "No." I grabbed Daniel's arm, but the brimmed hat man blocked me with one quick step. "You can follow," he said, "if you're ready to see how deep this goes." And just like that, they were gone, taking Daniel with them into the rain-soaked street. I stood in the shop, my breath coming fast, my knees weak. For a moment, I thought about locking the door, hiding in the back room, pretending none of this was happening. But something deep inside me wouldn't let me. I grabbed my coat and ran after them. The streets were nearly empty, the rain falling harder now, turning the cobblestones slick and shining. I caught sight of them up ahead, two dark shapes leading Daniel toward the narrow alley behind the old tailor's shop. My shoes splashed through puddles as I followed, keeping my distance. They turned into the alley, and I pressed myself against the brick wall, peering around the corner. The wiry man pushed Daniel to his knees. The brimmed hat man crouched in front of him, holding the strange pen-like object again. He twisted the top and a faint, almost electric hum filled the air. Daniel's voice was desperate. I told you I don't have it anymore. It's gone. The brimmed hat man didn't reply. He simply reached forward with the object. A loud crash from the far end of the alley made them all freeze. A dark van screeched to a stop, its side door sliding open before the wheels even stopped moving. 3 figures in black masks jumped out, moving fast. I didn't know if they were there to save Daniel or to take him. And in that split second of chaos, someone's hand grabbed me from behind, clamping over my mouth. A rough hand clamped over my mouth, the smell of leather and sweat filling my nose. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tried to twist away, but the arm around my waist was like iron, pulling me back into the shadows. Quiet! A voice hissed in my ear, low, urgent, and unfamiliar. I froze. In the alley ahead, the masked men were already moving toward Daniel, weapons in their hands. The brimmed hat man spun to face them, the strange pen-like object still humming in his grip. The wiry man stepped forward like a guard dog ready to attack. My captor pulled me further back until the fight ahead blurred behind a curtain of rain. The clash of shouts and heavy footsteps echoed off the brick walls. I couldn't see Daniel anymore. When we finally stopped, I was pressed against the cold wall of a side passage so narrow I could barely move my elbows. The man let go of my mouth but kept one hand gripping my arm. "Do you want to live?" he asked. I nodded, too breathless to speak. "Then you need to forget you ever saw that box," he said. "You need to disappear before." "Before what?" He never finished. A deafening bang rang out from the alley. It wasn't a gunshot. It was sharper, stranger, like metal striking something brittle. A bright blue light flared for a split second, illuminating the wet bricks around us. The man's head snapped toward the sound. His grip on my arm tightened. "They're using it," he muttered. "Fools." "Using what?" I demanded. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You really don't know, do you?" Before I could answer, a figure appeared at the mouth of the passage, tall, dressed in black, water dripping from his gloves. His voice was calm, almost casual. "She's coming with us." My captor stepped in front of me. "No, she isn't." For a moment neither moved. The rain hissed around us. Then the figure in black lunged. I didn't see much after that. Just a blur of motion, a grunt of pain, and my captor stumbling back. A hand seized my wrist, and before I knew it, I was being dragged out into the open street. The figure shoved me toward the open door of a black car idling by the curb. My instinct screamed run, but the moment I turned, someone else was there. Another masked figure blocking the way. "Get in," the first one ordered. I hesitated. My mind flashed to Daniel, to the alley, to the glowing blue light. "Where is he? Where's Daniel?" The masked figure's answer was quick and cold. "You'll see him if you come with us. Otherwise." He let the sentence hang. Something inside me snapped. I climbed into the car. The door slammed shut behind me. The engine roared to life, and the city lights streaked past the tinted windows. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to speak. "Who are you?" The masked figure in the front seat didn't turn around. "People who know what that box really is," he said. "And if you want to survive, you'll stop asking questions, at least until we're somewhere safe." I wanted to scream that I had a right to know, that I had been dragged into this without choice, but before I could open my mouth, the car made a sudden turn into a dark, narrow road I didn't recognize. Minutes passed in silence. Then, without warning, the car slowed to a stop in front of an old warehouse. The masked figures got out first, motioning for me to follow. Inside, the place was dim and smelled of rust and oil. Shadows moved in the corners. Other people watching silently. One of the masked men finally pulled off his mask. He was young, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and a tired face. "That box you had," he said, "was never meant to be here. And if the wrong hands open it, you won't just lose your smile. You'll lose everything." Before I could ask what he meant, the sound of tires screeching outside made everyone in the warehouse tense. The young man's face went pale. "They found us." And then the front doors exploded inward. The sound was deafening. A crash so loud it rattled the metal beams above us. Splinters of wood and shards of rusted metal flew inward as the massive warehouse doors were torn from their hinges. The blast of cold, rain-soaked air rushed inside, carrying with it the shadows of figures moving fast. "Positions!" the young man who had unmasked shouted. The masked people in the corner sprang into action, grabbing weapons from hidden crates. Some were rifles, others stranger, almost mechanical devices I'd never seen before. Through the wreckage stepped the brimmed hat man, flanked by the wiry man and two others. His coat dripped rain, his eyes calm, almost amused. "You've made this harder than it needed to be," he said, his voice carrying easily over the chaos. The young man stepped forward. "You're not getting her." The brimmed hat man tilted his head. "Oh, I will. And when I do, I'll have the key." His words sent a shiver straight through me. The key? Before I could think, the warehouse erupted into motion. The wiry man charged forward, colliding with one of the masked guards. A strange humming filled the air again. The sound I'd heard in the alley. Only this time it was louder, pulsing like it was alive. The young man turned to me. "Anna, run. Back door. Now." I didn't move. My legs wouldn't obey. I couldn't just leave. Not without Daniel. "Where is he?" I shouted over the noise. The young man's jaw clenched. "If you want to live to see him, you run." Another crash shook the warehouse. The brimmed hat man was moving toward me now, weaving through the fighting like the chaos didn't touch him. His eyes never left mine. "You have something of mine," he said. "I don't have it." My voice cracked. "They took it from me." He stopped just a few feet away. Rainwater dripped from the brim of his hat onto the dusty floor. "And yet," he said softly, "it's still with you." Before I could ask what he meant, a bright flash filled the room. Someone had fired one of the strange weapons. The light was blinding, the sound sharp and electric. When my vision cleared, the brimmed hat man was gone, vanished into the chaos like smoke. The young man grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back of the warehouse. We stumbled through a maze of crates, finally bursting into the cool night air. Outside, the rain was lighter, but the ground was slick beneath my shoes. A dark van was parked behind the warehouse, its engine already running. We climbed in and the driver, another masked figure, hit the gas, sending us racing down the deserted street. Only when we were several blocks away did the young man speak again. "You still don't know, do you?" I shook my head. "That box," he said slowly, "isn't just dangerous, it's alive. And if they've already started using it." His voice trailed off, his expression grim. "What does that mean for me?" I asked, my voice small. He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "It means you're not just part of this now, you are this. Whether you like it or not." The weight of his words pressed on my chest like a stone. We drove in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, the van slowed, pulling into a narrow lane lined with dark houses. The driver parked in front of a small, unremarkable building with peeling paint, and a single light glowing in the upstairs window. Inside, it was warm and smelled faintly of tea. The young man led me to a small kitchen, handed me a towel, and sat across from me at the table. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "But tomorrow, we have to move again. They won't stop." I wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers about Daniel, the box, and why I was suddenly the center of this storm. But before I could speak, a sound from upstairs made us both freeze. It was slow, soft, a single floorboard creaking under weight. The young man rose silently, motioning for me to stay where I was. He moved toward the stairs, every step careful. The air in the room felt heavier. Then a shadow appeared at the top of the staircase, and my blood turned to ice. Because it was Daniel. But his eyes were glowing blue. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Daniel stood there, his face pale in the dim light, his hair plastered to his forehead as if he'd come in from the rain. But it was his eyes, those strange luminous blue eyes, that rooted me to my chair. They weren't reflecting the light. They were the light. The young man in the kitchen stiffened, one hand moving slowly toward the strange weapon at his belt. "Stay back," he warned. Daniel's gaze moved from him to me. "Anna," he said softly. His voice was the same as I remembered, warm, almost pleading, but it carried an echo, as if something else spoke through him. I rose from my chair without realizing it. "Daniel, what happened to you?" His lips curved into something between a smile and a grimace. "I tried to protect you, but they..." His voice broke. He clenched his fists, as if fighting something inside himself. "It's inside me now." The young man's eyes narrowed. "How much of it?" Daniel's head tilted slightly, like he didn't understand the question. Or maybe like he was listening to someone I couldn't hear. Enough to find the rest. Every nerve in my body screamed that something was wrong. The rest of what? I asked. He stepped down one stair. Then another. His movements were slow, careful, like he didn't want to startle me. The box you had, it was just one piece. There are 3. They've been separated for years. But now they're waking up. The young man raised his weapon. Don't come any closer. Daniel stopped halfway down the stairs, his glowing eyes fixed on the young man. If you shoot me, you'll lose your only chance to stop them. I looked between them. Stop who? The ones who open the first box, Daniel said. The ones who will open the last unless, his gaze softened. Unless we get there first. The young man didn't lower his weapon. And what happens when you find them? You let the thing inside you out. You think we'll just trust you? Daniel's smile faded. You don't have to trust me. Just trust her. He was looking at me now. And in that moment, despite the fear, I felt the weight of his words settle heavily on my shoulders. The young man shook his head. No. We move without him. I opened my mouth to argue, but the sound of shattering glass cut through the room. We all turned toward the kitchen window just in time to see a dark shape crash through it. The impact threw the young man to the floor. Glass rained across the table. Daniel's eyes flared brighter. In the doorway stood the wiry man, rain dripping from his coat, a grin splitting his face. Time's up, he said. The wiry man didn't waste time. He lunged straight for the young man on the floor, moving with a speed that didn't seem human. The young man rolled just in time, kicking upward and sending the wiry man crashing into the kitchen table. Anna, get down, he shouted. I ducked as another shape appeared in the broken window, a second man, his face hidden beneath a mask. He swung himself inside with ease, glass crunching under his boots. Daniel moved then, fast. He grabbed the masked man by the collar and slammed him against the wall. The man's head snapped back, but instead of falling, he reached for something at his belt. A sharp, electric hum filled the room. I saw a flash of metal in his hand, one of those strange pen-like devices. Daniel! I screamed. He turned just as the masked man jabbed the device toward him. The tip stopped inches from Daniel's chest, and then nothing happened. The masked man froze, his eyes widening. Daniel's glowing blue gaze locked on his. You can't hurt me with that, he said, his voice almost inhuman now. With one swift motion, Daniel wrenched the device from the man's grip and flung it across the room. The wiry man, recovering from the blow to the table, straightened with an unsettling calm. You're wasting time, Daniel. She's coming with us. Now. Daniel stepped in front of me. Over my dead body. The wiry man's grin widened. If you insist. He moved again, impossibly fast, and this time his fist connected with Daniel's jaw. The force sent Daniel staggering into the wall. I tried to run to him, but the masked man grabbed my arm, yanking me back toward the window. Panic surged through me. My hand closed around the nearest object, a heavy ceramic mug from the counter, and I smashed it into his face. The man let go, cursing, and I stumbled back toward Daniel. The young man had gotten to his feet now, holding a strange, sleek weapon that hummed like the others but glowed faintly green. He aimed it at the wiry man. Let's see how you like this. The wiry man's eyes flicked to the weapon, and for the first time, his grin faltered. A pulse of green light burst from the barrel, hitting him square in the chest. He staggered backward, his body shuddering like the air around him had turned solid. Move, the young man barked. Daniel grabbed my hand, and the 3 of us bolted through the narrow hallway toward the back door. Rain hit my face as we burst outside, the cold air sharp against my skin. We ran down the alley behind the house, the sound of pursuit echoing in the distance. The young man led us through winding back streets until we reached a battered pickup truck parked beneath a flickering street lamp. We climbed in, Daniel slamming the passenger door shut just as the young man started the engine. Tires squealed against wet pavement as we sped into the night. For a while no one spoke. My mind raced with questions, but my chest still burned from the fear. Finally I asked, "Where are we going?" The young man's grip tightened on the wheel. "Somewhere they won't find us. Not for a while." Daniel turned to me, his eyes dimmer now but still faintly glowing. Anna, what happened tonight isn't the worst of it. The second box, they've already found it. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means, Daniel said quietly, we don't have much time before they open the last one. The young man shot him a sharp look. Don't tell her everything yet. Daniel ignored him. If they open all three, Anna, nothing will stop them. Not me. Not him. Not anyone. The rain outside grew heavier, blurring the road ahead. And then in the distance, I saw them. 2 headlights appearing in the rearview mirror, getting closer. The young man's voice was tense now. They found us again. Daniel's eyes flared bright blue. Then we don't run anymore. He reached for the door handle, while the truck was still moving. And before either of us could stop him, he jumped out into the dark, rain-soaked road. The truck swerved hard as Daniel hit the wet asphalt, rolling once before coming to his feet in a fluid motion that no normal man could have managed. The glow in his eyes was brighter now, cutting through the sheets of rain like twin lanterns. Stop the truck! I shouted. The young man slammed on the brakes, tires screeching as we skidded sideways. The pursuing vehicle didn't slow. It barreled toward Daniel, its engine roaring like an angry beast. Then in a blur Daniel moved. He sprinted straight toward the oncoming car. The headlights washed over him, turning his figure into a silhouette, and then he leapt, landing squarely on the hood. The car swerved violently, trying to shake him off, but he drove his fist into the windshield. Glass exploded inward, and the vehicle screeched to a halt. Through the cracked glass I saw the driver, a masked man, jerk back in shock. Daniel reached in, yanked him out with one hand, and tossed him into the road like he weighed nothing. The passenger door of the car flew open, and another man jumped out, holding one of those humming pen-like devices. He thrust it at Daniel, but this time, the glow in Daniel's eyes flared so bright it lit the rain around him. The device sparked, fizzled, and died in the man's hand. Daniel grabbed him by the throat. Where's the second box? He growled. The man choked, struggling against Daniel's grip. You'll never get it before. A sharp whistling cut through the air. Daniel's head jerked up just as a small, dark object arced toward him. It hit the ground at his feet and exploded in a burst of blinding white light. I shielded my eyes, but the afterimage burned behind my eyelids. When I looked again, Daniel was on his knees, clutching his head. The blue glow in his eyes flickered, like a flame about to go out. Go! The young man yelled, throwing the truck into reverse to put distance between us and the attackers. 2 figures emerged from the haze of light. One was the wiry man, the other, the brimmed hat man. He walked slowly toward Daniel, rain dripping from the brim, calm as ever. Still fighting it, I see, he said. But you can't keep it down forever. The wiry man pulled something from inside his coat, a small, cube-shaped object wrapped in black cloth. Even from the truck, I felt a strange pressure in the air, like it was drawing everything toward it. Daniel's gaze locked on it. His voice was strained, but I heard the fear in it. The second. The brimmed hat man smiled. And soon the last. The young man beside me cursed under his breath. We can't let them leave with it. Before I could ask what he planned, he slammed his foot on the gas and drove straight toward them. The attackers scattered, but the wiry man held onto the cube. Daniel, still struggling to his feet, staggered toward us. Don't let them. His words were drowned out by the sound of an engine starting somewhere nearby. Out of the darkness, a second vehicle roared to life. A black SUV with tinted windows. The wiry man tossed the cube into the back seat. The brimmed hat man climbed in after it. The SUV sped off into the rain, vanishing down a side road before we could react. Daniel reached the truck, pulling open the passenger door. His face was pale, the glow in his eyes dim but steady. They have it. And if they get the third... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. The young man gripped the wheel. Then we find it first. Daniel turned to me. Anna. There's something you need to know. The third box. He stopped mid-sentence, his head jerking toward the dark tree line ahead. From the shadows, something was moving toward us. Not a person. Not a vehicle. Something big. Something that made the rain itself seem to hesitate before touching it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The shape in the tree line didn't move like a person. It swayed, rippled, almost like smoke caught in a wind I couldn't feel. But it was solid. And it was coming closer. Daniel's hand shot out in front of me. "Stay in the truck." The young man's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "That's not possible. They haven't used it in years." "Used what?" I demanded, my voice cracking. Neither of them answered. The thing stepped, or maybe flowed, into the dim light spilling from the truck's headlights. It stood taller than any man I'd ever seen. Its form vaguely human but stretched, like a shadow pulled too far. Its eyes, if they were eyes, were twin orbs of pale, shifting light, and wherever it moved, the rain seemed to curve away from it. A low hum filled the air, the same unnatural sound I'd heard from the boxes, only deeper, heavier, like it came from inside my own chest. Daniel stepped out into the road, his blue glow flaring brighter. The shadow thing turned its head toward him, and the hum rose in pitch. "They sent a keeper," Daniel said over his shoulder. "Stay inside and whatever happens, don't look into its eyes." The young man muttered a curse, reaching into the glove box and pulling out another one of those strange glowing weapons. "If it's a keeper, it's after her." My pulse spiked. "Me? Why?" Before I could finish, the keeper moved. 1 second it was 20 feet away, the next it was right in front of Daniel, its long, ink-black arm shooting forward like a whip. Daniel caught it with both hands, his boots skidding in the wet gravel from the force. The sound of their struggle was like metal grinding against stone. Blue light clashed with pale light, flaring between them and sending ripples through the rain. "Drive!" Daniel shouted. The young man didn't hesitate. He slammed the truck into reverse, spinning it around in the narrow road. I gripped the seat, my eyes locked on Daniel through the back window. He was holding the keeper in place, buying us time, but the thing was pushing him back, step by step. Then I made a mistake. I met its eyes. It wasn't like looking at a person. It was like staring into a well with no bottom, a pull that grabbed at something deep inside me. My breath caught, and for a moment, I couldn't hear the engine, the rain, or even my own heartbeat. "Anna!" the young man barked, his voice snapping me out of it. I turned away, my whole body trembling. We were almost out of sight when a blinding flash lit up the road behind us. I twisted in my seat just in time to see Daniel on his knees, the keeper standing over him. The pale light from its eyes spread over him like smoke sinking into his skin. The young man swore again. "If it marks him, we lose him." I didn't even think. I threw open the truck door while it was still moving and jumped into the rain, sprinting back toward them. My shoes slipped on the wet gravel, but I didn't stop. The keeper's head turned toward me, and the hum deepened until my bones ached. Daniel's eyes met mine, still glowing but weaker now. "Anna, run," he whispered. Instead, I grabbed the only thing I could find, a jagged piece of metal from the wrecked car in the road, and swung it at the keeper's arm. The blade connected, and for a split second the hum broke. The keeper staggered back, its pale eyes flickering. Daniel gasped like someone had pulled him out of deep water. "Go!" he shouted this time, grabbing my wrist. We ran. The young man had spun the truck around, and was leaning over the passenger seat, holding the door open. We dove inside, and the second the doors slammed shut, he floored the gas. The headlights cut through the rain, but I could still feel it. That low hum, distant now but not gone. "They won't stop sending them," Daniel said, his voice hoarse. "Not until they have the third." The young man glanced at him. "Then we'd better get to it first." I opened my mouth to ask where we were going, but Daniel's expression stopped me cold. His glow was fading fast, and there was something else in his eyes now, fear. "They're not just looking for the box anymore," he said quietly. The young man's voice tightened. "Then what are they after?" Daniel looked at me. "You." For a long moment, the sound of the rain and the truck's engine were the only things in the world. My throat felt tight, like I'd swallowed a stone. "Me," I finally managed to say. "What do you mean, me?" Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "The boxes aren't just artifacts, Anna. They're keys. And you're the lock." I shook my head. "That doesn't even make sense." "It doesn't have to," the young man cut in sharply, taking a corner too fast. The truck fishtailed before straightening. "If she's the target, then we change the plan. No more chasing. We hide her." Daniel slammed his palm against the dashboard. You can't hide her. Once the boxes are joined, the connection will be complete. They'll find her anywhere. My chest was tight now, my breath shallow. How long have you known this? Daniel hesitated. That silence was worse than any answer he could have given me. The young man swore under his breath. Where's the third box? Daniel closed his eyes briefly, as if seeing something far away. Buried. In a place no one goes willingly, but they're already moving toward it. Before either of them could say more, headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. Not one pair, three. They found us, the young man muttered. The trucks behind us were moving fast, their tires hissing on the wet road. Then came the sound, sharp cracks like snapping branches, but I knew they were gunshots when the side mirror shattered. Down, the young man barked. I dropped low in my seat as glass sprayed over the dashboard. Daniel twisted around, his eyes flaring blue again, but it wasn't as strong as before. They won't stop shooting. You have to lose them now. The young man jerked the wheel hard right, and we skidded onto a narrow dirt track lined with dripping trees. The headlights behind us followed without hesitation. Rain pounded the roof, the wipers squealing uselessly across the windshield. I clung to the door handle, the truck bouncing over deep ruts in the mud. One of the pursuing vehicles pulled up alongside us. Through the window I saw a masked man lean out, aiming a black device that hummed just like the boxes. Before he could fire, Daniel's hand shot out the window, and a burst of blue light slammed into the device. It exploded in the man's hand, sending sparks into the rain. But the victory was short-lived. The dirt road ahead ended in a sheer drop. Beyond it, nothing but a wide black river churning with storm water. Brake! I screamed. The young man didn't brake. He floored the gas. Are you insane? I shouted. Hold on, he yelled back. The truck hit the edge, and for a terrifying moment, we were airborne. The river swallowed us whole with a deafening splash. Cold water surged in instantly. My seatbelt locked, trapping me as the current spun us. Daniel reached across, unbuckling me with one sharp tug, then did the same for himself. The truck was sinking fast. The headlights flickered once, then died, leaving us in darkness. Out! Daniel shouted. I followed him through the shattered window, the freezing water biting into my skin. My lungs burned as I kicked toward the surface, breaking through with a gasp. The young man surfaced beside me, grabbing my arm. This way, shores close. We fought the current, dragging ourselves onto the muddy bank. I collapsed onto my back, the rain hitting my face, my breath ragged. That's when I saw them. Figures. Standing on the far bank. At least 6 of them. Each one holding a box-shaped object that pulsed with the same pale light as the keeper's eyes. Daniel cursed under his breath. They already have them. All 3? The young man asked, his voice grim. Daniel's jaw tightened. No. Just 2. But that's enough. I pushed myself up on my elbows. Enough for what? The figures on the far bank moved closer to the water, their pale lights reflecting on the black surface. And then all at once they raised the boxes high above their heads. The hum started, low at first, then growing until it shook the ground beneath me. The young man grabbed my arm. Run! But I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, watching as the pale light from the boxes stretched across the river toward me, reaching like fingers. The moment it touched my skin, I felt it, cold, deep, endless. And a voice. Not a sound exactly, but a thought that wasn't mine. We've found you. The light flared. The hum became a roar. And everything went black. I woke to silence. Not the kind of quiet you get at night, but a deep, heavy stillness that pressed against my ears, as if the world itself was holding its breath. My eyes flickered open. Above me, there was no sky, just a smooth, dark ceiling that pulsed faintly, as though it were alive. The surface seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in slow rhythm. I sat up fast. Or tried to. My arms and legs felt heavy, like I'd been underwater for too long. I was lying on a flat surface that wasn't wood, or stone, or metal. It was something else entirely, something warm to the touch. Daniel. My voice came out hoarse. No answer. I tried again, louder. Daniel. The sound didn't echo. It was swallowed instantly, disappearing into the strange air. I slid off the platform, my bare feet touching a floor that rippled faintly under my weight. There were no walls that I could see, just endless shadow in every direction. The faint pulse of the ceiling made it hard to tell how far away anything was. Then a whisper. It wasn't behind me, or in front of me, it was inside my head. Why do you run from us? My knees weakened. Who's there? You carry the lock. We carry the key. You were made for this. A shape emerged from the shadows. It was human, or at least it wore the shape of one, but its skin shimmered like oil on water. The eyes were familiar, those same pale, endless orbs I'd seen in the keeper. Only now there were dozens more behind it. They stepped forward in perfect unison, their movements too smooth to be natural. Each one carried a small box cradled in both hands, pulsing with that same pale light. I backed away, my heel hitting the platform I'd woken on. What do you want from me? The nearest figure tilted its head. To finish what was begun. My pulse pounded in my ears. I don't even know what that means. You will. They all stepped forward at once. The light from their boxes brightened, and I felt something cold wrap around my ankles, not physically, but inside me, like invisible threads pulling me toward them. A sudden crack tore through the silence. Blue light, bright and sharp, flashed across the floor, slicing through the shadowy figures. They staggered back, their lights flickering. Anna. I spun toward the voice. Daniel. His glow was brighter than I'd ever seen it, his eyes almost white from the intensity. The young man was behind him, holding one of the strange weapons I'd seen in the truck, but it was glowing blue instead of pale. How did you? I started, but Daniel grabbed my arm. No time. They've started the linking. If they complete it, there's no undoing it. We ran, the blue light carving a path through the pale glow of the figures. But the shadows didn't give up. They surged forward, reforming, their whisper growing louder in my head. You cannot leave. You are the lock. I stumbled, the words burrowing deep into my thoughts. The young man fired the weapon again, breaking their advance for a moment. There. Daniel pointed ahead. A jagged opening had appeared in the pulsing wall, like a wound tearing itself open. We dove through it. And fell. The air whipped past me, black and cold. Then we hit something hard and wet. My vision swam, my lungs heaved, and when I finally focused, I realized we were standing ankle-deep in water. We were in a huge underground cavern, the ceiling lost in shadow. The walls dripped with moisture, and in the center of the space stood a single object. A tall stone pedestal with a black box on top. The third box. Daniel's face went pale. We're too late. It's waking. The black box pulsed once, slowly, then again faster. The air around it shimmered like heat over asphalt. And then it began to open. The lid of the black box rose without a sound. No hinges, no lock. It simply floated upward, as though the air itself was lifting it. Inside there was no treasure, no strange device like the others. There was only darkness. But it wasn't empty. The darkness moved. It spilled over the sides of the box, slow and thick, like smoke in water. Wherever it touched the stone pedestal, frost bloomed instantly, creeping outward across the floor. The young man raised his weapon. Tell me that's not. It's not just a keeper, Daniel said, his voice shaking. It's what made the keepers. The darkness kept growing, and as it did, it began to take shape. A tall, thin figure, its edges shifting and blurring, never quite solid. Its head tilted, though I couldn't see eyes or a face. Then I felt it, its attention. It was on me. At last, a voice said, not in the air, but in my bones. The lock. My knees buckled. Daniel stepped in front of me, his glowing eyes narrowing. You can't have her. The figure didn't move closer, but the frost spreading from the pedestal reached Daniel's boots, climbing up his legs like it was alive. His glow dimmed. The young man fired the weapon. A crackling bolt of blue energy slammed into the figure. For a moment it shattered like glass, only to reform instantly, the darkness flowing back together. You will open, the voice said. And when you do, nothing will remain closed. The frost reached my feet. It felt like it was seeping into my skin, into my blood. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Daniel grabbed my hand. Anna, listen to me. If it pulls you in, it's over. Do you understand? Over. I can't. My voice broke as the cold climbed higher. Yes, you can. His grip tightened painfully. Fight it. But the voice inside me was louder now, filling every space in my mind. You were made for this. You cannot resist. The cavern began to shake. Chunks of stone fell from the ceiling, splashing into the icy water. The pedestal cracked, the black box sinking halfway into the frost. The figure stretched one arm toward me. Not quickly, not aggressively, just certain. And then the darkness touched my fingertips. The cold stopped hurting. In fact, it stopped feeling cold at all. Felt right. Somewhere far away, Daniel shouted my name. The young man fired again. The cavern roared with the sound of stone splitting. But it didn't matter. Because in that moment I understood exactly what the voice meant. I wasn't just the lock. I was the door. And I could feel it turning. I wish I could tell you I woke up the next morning safe in my bed. That everything I'd seen was just a strange dream. But I didn't wake up in my bed. And it wasn't a dream. That night in the cavern changed me. Something opened inside me, and no matter how much I want it closed again, some doors don't work that way. The cold still lingers in my bones, even when the sun is warm on my face. Sometimes when I'm alone, I hear the hum of the boxes, soft, patient, waiting. Daniel is gone. He left without telling me where, though I know he's still out there, fighting the shadows that slip between our days. The young man, whose real name I never learned, promised he would return if they ever came back for me. I've stopped asking when that will be. I already know the answer sooner than I want. My smile. That went missing the night they found me. People tell me I still smile sometimes, but they're wrong. A real smile comes from a place untouched by fear. And that place in me feels far away now. I don't think I lost it forever, but I know I won't get it back until this battle, my battle, is over. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. We don't always get to choose the fights we face. Sometimes they choose us. But we can choose what we become in the middle of them. The years might take your smile, your peace, even your sense of who you are. But they can't take your will to keep going unless you hand it over. And I'm not handing mine over. Not now. Not ever. Because somewhere in the dark, something is still calling my name. And the next time it does, I'll be ready.